Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and today we're going to be talking about Twitter and the insanity and how they're child grabbers. And, yeah, I don't quite see what's really going on here, really, other than them trying to endorse, the child grabber type of mantra. And this is kind of really showing on how the LGBTQ community is being more leaning to being child grabbers than really not being child grabbers at this point. And, yeah, we're just gonna go right into the article here and kind of explain exactly what is going on. Twitter says it bans using groomer as an anti-LGBTQ slur, but its enforcement is lacking. Probably a good idea considering, maybe the word groomer is probably used to expel the, child grabbers. Not only that, Twitter was also known for somebody going after posting very sexual photographic stuff to a minor, and that person did not get banned or reprimanded for it. So you kind of see where Twitter lines with their type of groomer type mentality, because the only reason why this is becoming more of a bigger problem for Twitter is because more of these Twitter people that are acting more like groomers are, going after kids more often, so that's being exposed more, and now Twitter has to ban it because the LGBT community, since they're pretty much the only ones pushing for this bullshit, is that they have to ban it because they have to protect their so-called child grabbers. Because if they don't, it's just going to paint a very bad light. And the more reason why we can see this happening is because with all the pride stuff that's happening there, and then we go down to what they're trying to do to kids, where they're trying to do trans surgeries to kids, which also, by the way, is sterilizing them, is that they're pushing all this stuff. We're seeing them push for this stuff, and they're actively going after kids. So there's no way, so they have to do something to protect that and keep that going. So, by all that means, we have these very sick people that want to keep on going after kids. So, they're trying to normalize this, they're trying to make it a thing, and we have to fight back and make sure this is not a normalized thing, and make sure that the entire Democratic Party at this point, the very far left Democratic Party, may I mind you, are the ones that are technically doing this. Now, I know what people are going to say, that there's Democrats, of course, that's going along lines and they're all bad. Well, maybe, but there's not all Democrats that actually think going after children is the correct way to go. So, let's just try to step back a little bit. The article goes on to say, Twitter said to the Daily Dot that it bans calling people groomers based on their gender identity, but in practice, it often doesn't enforce this rule, which probably shouldn't be enforced. On Wednesday, the Daily Dot reported that a subreddit post inadvertently intensified pressure on Twitter to ban calling LGBTQ people groomers. Grooming is a slur that falsely equates being LGBTQ with being a pedophile. No, it doesn't. Listen. The only reason why, again, I'll say it again, the only reason why you're thinking that is falsely equates to LGBTQ people being groomers is because the majority of the LGBTQ community is doing these type of grooming acts. So, that being said, you banning this is automatically saying that they are actually legitimately pedophiles already as is, or what we would call child grabbers, because we all know that in reality is that they're the ones pushing for this. You don't see the Republicans pushing for this, and we all know when Republicans even try to remotely push for this, they get slammed hard by even people on their side, so it's not gonna work. But the only people that are endorsing this type of lunacy, this type of sick behavior, is, well, the Democrats, because the people that are on this side are on the Democratic side. They are blue, and they are part of the LGBTQ community, because it's been mostly about them. Notice how when they're talking about it, they have rainbow color hair, they don't look like they're right in the head, obviously, so they're the ones pushing for this stuff. So, again, the only reason why you think it equates to the grooming equating to LGBTQ is because it's a majority of them, if not all of them, are doing it. I would say majority, because there are people that are from that group of people, which I don't think they even label themselves as part of that group anymore, that don't agree with this BS. Where there are people that are saying, well, okay, this is going a bit too far. So, again, this is a huge problem. The slur has roots in the term's original meaning, which first is have sexual predators coerce and manipulate children in order to abuse them. Yes, which is what's going on. After the article published, Twitter provided a statement claiming that calling transgender or non-binary people groomers violates policies against hate speech. We are committing to combating abuse motivated by hatred, prejudice, or intolerance, particularly abuse that seeks to silence the voices of those who have been historically marginalized. For this reason, we prohibit behavior that targets individuals or groups with abuse based on the perceived membership in a protected category. Lauren Alexander, Twitter's Health Protection Communications lead said via email. Use of this term is prohibited under the hateful conduct policy when it's used as a descriptor in context of discussion of gender identity. Twitter also said it is aware that there are issues with how it enforces this rule. We recognize we have more work to do to ensure this content is addressed in a timely and consistent manner, and we continue to invest in our automated tools and people teams to identify and address gaps in our enforcement. Earlier this week, the Daily Dot reported a tweet calling a transgender woman a groomer to see if it violated Twitter's policies of abusive behavior. On Wednesday, the Twitter said that the tweet didn't violate its policies. After reviewing the available information, we want to let you know this tweet hasn't broken our safety policies. It is said in an email. We know this is an instance you're looking for if this account breaks our policies in the future, we'll notify you. Via email, Twitter said that it's looking into why the report was denied. It didn't respond by press time. The reason why Twitter would not want to enforce this so heavily is because it would be a huge problem. Because the only thing that it does by banning the word groomer only really hurts the LGBTQ community. It doesn't really help them at all. Because when you do that, as I said before already, it really does just hurt them because it makes them be coming out as legitimate child grabbers. Besides, even if you ban the word, the only reason the word is going to be call them predators. So it's going to be switched off to predators. And what are you going to do? Ban the word predator now? And what I'm going to con is that if you ban the word predator, I'm just going to say child grabbers. So again, you can do what you want, but we're going to come up with different terms to label them. And if Twitter keeps on banning these things, each time they ban a word that is being directed to these type of people, it's just making them worse and worse and worse. So yes, Twitter, keep doing this. Because you're only going to make the LGBTQ community worse by putting that stigma that they are this like this. So, I mean, because that's the reason. They're the only ones doing it. Alexander Carabello, a clinical instructor at Harvard Law School, was the subject of that tweet. Carabello told the Daily Dot on Thursday that transphobia and homophobia increased significantly on Twitter earlier this year, in part due to the steady drumbeats of anti-LGBTQ rhetoric for some large influential accounts. Carabello is a transgender woman. It's only increasing because the only good thing that the pandemic has done to any of our culture has been expose the actual teachers that are in our school actively grooming our children. That's what it exposed. And the reason why that has gone up significantly for the whole groomer thing is because it's been exposed and you guys don't like being exposed for what you're doing to children. That's the reason why you don't like it, because it shows what you're doing. So people actively call you groomer. Either way, we're just gonna call you predator and just and call it a day. So I mean, yeah. It was just like vicious trolling, especially against my LGBTQ person that was visible on the platform and is continuing on. Carl Barrow said it on a phone conversation, and it's only gotten worse. Carl Barrow said she has had uneven success reporting tweets that use a groomer slur. Aaron Drenning, LGBTQ program director at Media Matters for America, agrees that Twitter doesn't enforce its policies prohibiting harassment and abuse of LGBTQ people. Most LGBTQ people on Twitter have had the experience of reporting things and finding that there is no action taken whatsoever, she told the Daily Dot in a phone conversation Thursday afternoon. The rising tide of attacks on LGBTQ people isn't isolated to Twitter. It's found across the web and is spilling into the real world. Anti-LGBTQ laws have been proposed and passed, and there has been an uptick in violence and attacks. There hasn't been upticks in violence or attacks at all. The only thing that's been an uptick is exposing what you guys truly are. I mean, that's just the reality. And not all of them are like this, by the way. Not all of them are sick in the head. Carvalho pointed out to an LGBTQ bar in Brooklyn, New York, being burned down by angry Proud Boys, disrupting a drag queen story hour, and neo-Nazis getting arrested at a private event. All of these have occurred in recent events. I mean, drag queen story hour is really, really bad. It really targets children in a very nefarious and sickening way. I don't really condone of burning down buildings, but I'm going to plain out say it. I almost kind of advocate for that because I really don't like it when you're going after children. At all. If you want to advocate to adults or whatever, go ahead, do that, and have people decide. But once you go after children, it's where I draw a hard line of calling out your BS. She said that the person who called her a groomer on Twitter, James Lindsay, is possibly the worst example of using that term for LGBTQ people. She described it as Lindsay's shit stick. Then his followers attack whoever it is, she added. And in fact, Lindsay takes credit for the exponential increase of LGBTQ people and their allies being called groomers. Not only do I call them that a lot and accurately, I think it started the trend, Lindsay told the Daily Dot via Twitter direct message Thursday afternoon. Lindsay insists he's not transphobic or homophobic, however. He defends his use of the term groomer. I use groomer to apply to cult grooming, thought reform, say into queer Marxist ideology, and sexual predatory grooming, which is identical but correlates, he said, adding, I only call things what they are. I don't play word games, despite my obvious rhetorical savvy. I would agree with that. Lindsay provided no evidence that any of the people or entities that he's called groomers, which includes the Trevor Project, a suicide prevention organization for LGBT youth, are groomers in either sense of the term as he defines it. He said that educating children that LGBTQ people exist isn't necessarily grooming, but that it is such if it is done with the intent of teaching them to accept the ideological conclusions and views of queer Marxism and gender ideology. However, religions may personally define the term. The vast majority of people understand the term groomer to refer to pedophiles and realize it's being used to demonize LGBTQ people, which it's not. It's only being used because they're the ones that are doing it. That's the point, Carbello says. She said that attempts to redefine what groomer means are just word games. He's not redefining the word groomer at all. She also believes that such attacks on LGBTQ people are designed to create a moral panic which is likely to escalate. It's only going to escalate because of what you're doing. We're seeing this more permissive atmosphere for people to commit violence because the language has shifted and has allowed them to justify the violence, because if you believe LGBTQ people are a threat to children and are harming children, allows you to justify any means of violence. Because that's what your group has been doing. What other group is doing it? Listen, Carabello, please point out to me what group is doing it. Please tell me that. Because if we want to go look at these people's Twitter bios and look what they vote for and look what they're a part of, they're going to be part of the LGBTQ community. That's what they're a part of. So point to me, whether it's a Republican or a conservative or anybody for that matter, that is doing that. Please, point it to me and I'll call them out as well. Point it to me. You can't. Because it doesn't exist. Carbarro said Twitter had a chance to stop the escalation before it got worse, but failed. She believes that the company scaled back enforcement of its policies amid the turmoil over Elon Musk's sense of board takeover. Musk said that he wanted Twitter to be as permissive as possible about what types of speech are allowed. Some believe this emboldened right-wing figures and outlets to escalate their hate speech. No, it just means that it's going to be treated equal. But again, calling somebody a groomer when it's actively a truth is not a problem. Twitter has generally been better about this, but just in the last few months, it's been particularly bad, Carvalho said it. Twitter has stepped up in March, just want to be this big a deal. Now the horse is out of the barn, and the LGBT community is paying the price. I don't care at this point, because, again, I don't want kids being targeted. Carvalho says she hasn't considered leaving the platform, but knows that others who have significantly scaled back their use of it due to the LGBT abuse. I know a lot of trans people who have had really severely negative effect on their mental health, said Drennan of Media Matters of the Transphobia on Twitter. It's a place where a lot of our community is, and it's really frustrating when you can't have that experience without hateful people in your mentions and hurling slurs. Carvalho said she uses a plugin called RedBlock that automatically blocks everyone who likes or retweets a trolling tweet. She predicts that there will be an uproar Twitter track down on the use of groomer. Now one of the things they're afraid of is the backlash, she said. Lindsay was suspended from following publication, according to a screenshot provided by Carabello. Twitter said that it was for violating its abusive behavior policy by calling her and other LGBTQ people and groups groomers. The new Lindsay suspension was also shared by Jenna Ellis, a conservative lawyer. Yeah, but I mean, again, you're going to have to paint exactly to me where the line is to who's doing it. Tell me who is actively trying to go after kids. Exactly, what group of people? And then you have to get back to me and see what's going on. It's really your group of people. I didn't say it, but that's the truth. Alright guys, that's it for the video. Like, subscribe, share, and take care. Also, another thing. let's keep on calling out these child grabbers what they really are. Take care.